Hey everyone, Yevi here, and today we're going to be talking about KWZ Cappuccino, a handmade fountain pen ink that comes in a very nice, hefty glass bottle and has a vanilla smell. Both of those two things are why I love KWZ inks, that vanilla smell and the glass bottles. I love a good, hefty bottle. It's hard to just randomly get shuffled off of a desk or anything like that, which around here happens more often than it should. This bottle did come from Pen Chalet at a discount for review. I was getting the order together for the fountain pen, the entry-level fountain pen shootout. And since I had decided on my Noodler's Rome Burning review that I needed to review more yellowish, goldish, bronzish inks, that one had to happen. So we did. Ron provided it at discount for review. And I'm glad he did, because it's a really good ink. And I think it's a keeper, honestly. Even if I had ended up paying full price for it, I definitely would have. It's totally worth the money for what you get. Now, the pen for this review was my Red Dragon Penco Nymph with my Regalia Writing Labs Epilogue Nib, which gives me a good look all the way from extra fine to a triple broad, just depending on how I'm writing with the pen. And the good thing about this pen, I can go about a week in between writing sessions and not have to worry about it drying out. That could have also been the ink. I mean, I haven't written with the KWZ ink for about a week, so let's see what it does here. Raise your hands if you just said that in the SpongeBob voice. Now, I will say, this ink is a good middle-of-the-road yellow, gold, brown, bronze, whatever you want to call it. On one end, we've got a just dark bronze gold Noodler's Rome Burning. On the lighter side, we've got Iroshizuku Inaho, which is just strictly yellowish gold. And then, in the middle, you've got KWZ Cappuccino. Now, I know I'm probably going to find one, but I almost wish this ink was like halfway in between these two. I think a combination of these two would make the perfect ink for me, which means it's probably out there, so I just need to keep looking. Now, another thing about this ink, if you look at where I did the pen, swab, and drip, so you can see some of the lines here on the pen example, but the ink really filled in on the swab example. It's really uniform. You can hardly tell where any of the layers are. And on the drip, when it did dry, except for here where it did layer a little thin, it's very uniform there as well. So what you get out of the pen is about 99% of what you're going to get. And I'll show you what I mean by that here in a second. But before we get to that, let's look at the dry time, because this drip took about 2 days to dry. And here's why. You can see here that even on an extra fine, it's taking between 7 and 10 seconds to dry. Whereas on a triple broad nib, we're looking at almost 20 seconds before it dries. That is a very wet ink. It is an extremely wet ink. The only other wet ink I have seen that has been like this was Organic Studio Mendel. That one took forever and a day to dry as well. And it makes it hard for me to use this ink in like any long form writing. I can do letter writing with it because I can just separate the pages until they dry. But journaling with this ink is a little difficult, so it's definitely not even going to go to work with me. It's literally just a letter writing ink. But it doesn't mean that it's a bad one-trick pony ink or anything like that. Case in point, look at how it reacted in these different nibs. And I'll go ahead and get this closer to the camera for you. You can tell, like, from the Parker 51 to a Conklin medium, going into regular broads all the way to the triple broad, this ink has quite a few different looks to it. If you get a really thin line like the Parker 51, then it's a good dry brown. And then if you get a very wet broad nib like the Opus 88 Fantasia, the ink almost comes out like brown black, which I had to be very careful when I wrote this sample. I was like, don't touch it with your finger. It's not dry yet. And that you could actually see just a little bit of smearing on the A. Yeah, you can see a little bit of smearing there on the A, where as I was writing, my thumb came across and grabbed it really quick. One thing I do like about this ink, though, even though it's very wet, on the writing samples here, between the extra fine and the broad, see the feathering? Of course you don't. It's because it didn't. Most wet inks I use feather like a son of a gun. This one didn't. It was extremely well behaved, and I really love that about this ink. If KWZ could make cappuccino in a much faster drying ink, I would love this ink. It would get like a 9 out of 10. The only reason it wouldn't get a 10 out of 10 is because the perfect ink for me is a really interesting goldish green that I don't think anyone has ever created. I'll be proven wrong later. I know it. But enough about the ink and the color. Let's see how it reacts to water. And for that, let's go over to the kitchen sink. All right, so welcome to the kitchen sink. We've got cappuccino in triple broad and extra fine against our usual suspects, the Walkover Vistula and Green at Night with the Retro 51 gel refill. So we've got our fresh coffee, brewed like 30 seconds before I dumped it on here. As you can tell, cappuccino's not holding up too well to the coffee. The other three inks are doing okay. Retro 51's just holding in there like it always does, so no shocker. But let's go ahead and see, now that the coffee's had a little bit of time to sit, how the inks hold up to a name brand cleaner. All right, here we go. We're just going to go ahead and give it a couple squirts and set the bottle aside there. Go ahead and put the coffee back in the Keurig to get another cup going. Nothing like spilling coffee to actually make you think that you need more. So after we've let it soak in here for a few seconds and we've got the coffee brewing, now let's go ahead and get the kitchen sink ready. Got the water spigot up and over the top of the paper, and we're going to go ahead and just soak it with extremely hot water. As you can tell, the KWZ inks are doing what they normally do. Well, at least Walkover Vistula, this is like the third test I've used it in, and it's holding up about like it always does. The cappuccino has pretty much completely released from the paper. The Green at Night is still legible, but part of me thinks that's just the sheer amount of ink that was put on there by the Omniflex nib. And the Retro 51 gel refill's doing what it always does, being the wonderful litmus test of an ink that I always need. Now that we've had it soaking here for a bit, let's go ahead and cut the spigot and take a little bit of a closer look here at how the inks fared. As you can tell, compared to the other three inks, KWZ Cappuccino didn't hold up at all. It pretty much just washed right off. So on a scale of 1 to 5, definitely giving this ink a 1 on the water fastness test. So there you have my review of KWZ Cappuccino. If you want this good medium brownish gold ink, head on over to penchalet.com where you can find it for $15. And while you're there, click on the radio podcast link at the top of the page and enter in Inktwell in the How You Heard About Us section. You can find me over on Twitter and Instagram at the Inktwell. You can also find me at floor3media.com/theinktwell or theinktwell.com. Thank you for watching. See you next time.